Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today's another special show. Today we're highlighting... That's right. Maker boxes. Pretty smooth, huh? Okay, so let's see what's in April's Maker box. I did want to do something special. So today we're going to be using all 4 filaments incorporated into one print, and we'll see how that went. I'm your host Fergie, and this is Average Joe's 3D. So let's see what we have in the Maker box. Now I've already opened this Maker box because I wanted to print up all the pieces so they're available now. So if you look in there, there may not be as much filament as there should be, because I've been printing for a day or so now. So you get your candy, today's Starburst. You get an invitation to the East Coast Rip Rap Festival, June 22nd through the 24th in Maryland. Might be worth going to. I've got 10% off Maker boxes. This is from Make Shaper. They have a bunch of different filament. We'll take a look at their filament, but it's 10% off. I've got a 2018 calendar from MakerBox. Thank you, MakerBox. Alright, let's get to the filament. So the first one is PETG. I don't do a lot of work with PETG because it gets gooey and kind of a mess on my printer, but I'm going to try this time for you guys. As always, PETG, it should be 230 to 260 on the nozzle, and the heat bed should be 70 to 100, similar to ABS. So we'll see how this one went. I've got some really flexible filament. This filament is by Make Shaper. It is really flexible. It goes 220 to 245. The bed is at 600, and you should run about 20 to 50. Now, let me show you this, because this is kind of important. When you take a look at this, and it's like a rubber band, like literally a rubber band. I've had flexible that you could feed very easily through almost any printer. This is not that filament. This filament, I went 50% my normal speed, 50 to 40%, and I kept it there to make sure I got good even layers, because my first attempt at this was a mess. In fact, let's go ahead and take a look at trying to use this on Ender 2. Let's see what happens when we try to print this flexible filament. As I showed you before, this filament is really, really flexible. So I decided to go to my Ender 2 because it did have one of the smallest Bowden tubes. So I thought maybe I could push it through. And after trying to print for a little bit, let's see what happened. Just look back here, and yeah, about that. It didn't quite work out the way I wanted. There's no way this is pushing through the Bowden tube, through the nozzle. So that's like epic fail. I don't know what I'm going to do with this rubber band, but I'm certainly not printing with it today. I might try a bigger nozzle. That's a 0.4. Okay, I put on the big dog here. This is a 1mm nozzle. I slowed the speed down to 50%, and so far, not looking bad. I'm pretty happy with it. The last 2 in the box, I have some blue. This is PLA++. Now, I have a lot of luck with PLA+. We'll see how this PLA++ prints out. Normal PLA temperatures, it wants to bed at about 70°C. I didn't use 70°C. In fact, I use 40 like I normally do. And the speed's full speed. There shouldn't be a problem with that. This is by Breathe 3DP. That's Breathe 3DP. The last one I'm kind of intrigued about. It's wood fill. And this wood fill, you print it like PLA. 195 to 220 on the nozzle, 50 on the bed. You're supposed to be able to print up to 100 millimeters per second. Okay, now I didn't. This is by ColorFab. I printed at half speed to make sure I didn't get any holes, make sure I get good coverage. So let's take a look at each one of these. Now, I wanted like one project. So I went on to Thingiverse, and I had seen where Joel, 3D printing nerd, had printed out his own Plinko Puck, because he's going to the Matter Hacker event there. They have a Plinko thing. And I'm like, Plinko is perfect. Now, the most famous Plinko right now is done by Make Anything Springy Spinning Plinko Puck. It's by Dave Montes. And his design is amazing. I definitely recommend you use it if you can. So first we'll go over this. This is his springy stuff. And so for his Plinko, which I'll make a link, it's made like this. You can see this. This is the main body of it. This is done in the PET G. Came out really well. The bottom layers not so much. There was some sanding going on, but the top layers came out great. This is flexible because it's PET G. So as far as doing a Plinko thing, it bounces pretty good. And then the yellow stuff, I printed the outer rim. Made it out of rubber. This goes right on here. And so now, move this out of the way. Look at that bounce. Pretty amazing. So the purple's made out of PET G. The yellow's made out of the springy stuff. Now for the springy stuff, I wanted to show you something more exciting than just like a band of rubber around the Plinko. So I went ahead and made a little dinosaur. This I got off Thingiverse as well. No, my mini factory actually. He was much bigger, but I just made a nice little small, little cute cuddly dino. He is fully flexible and bouncy himself because he's made out of this rubber band stuff. So that was pretty cool. Now, this has a counterbalance to keep your logo straight up and down. So I made the PLA++ blue into the counterweight and the axle that goes along with it. But I know it's kind of small and it's hard to see, and I wanted to show you the performance of the PLA++ using PLA settings. So I made this for a friend. This is a couple. So you put your hot coffee in here. You can hold it like this. It's kind of cool. It's got the logo on it. It's got some really good cutouts. Very little stringing. Top and bottom looks great. Layer adhesion is good. Man, it is tough. This is nothing but 3 layers going around here. I think I actually used 4 perimeters on this, but it is not moving. That PLA++, very strong. Highly recommend it. And it's easier to print than the PET G. So this stuff is amazing. And last but not least was my wood. So I made the inner logo out of wood, the wood fill. Now I designed this myself. I took his logo and I used Tinkercad to take his logo off and put my logo on, which is like a delta, as you can see, with smaller and smaller triangles getting a little bit higher as they go. And what I found out was the detail for the wood, not very good. These layers just came right off when I touched it. Just the slightest touch and they're rubbed off. I had to super glue them back on. Now the structural integrity of the wood, great. Fine detail, not so great. So I wanted to show you something that what didn't require fine detail that may rub off the surface. So I printed this. I printed this for a friend. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet. I'm going to have to mount it on something. Although look at the finish on that. Isn't that incredible? Front and back, top and bottom layers, amazing. This is an Ender 2, so the sides show almost no layers at all. If I wanted, I could sand this, I could stain it, I could paint it. It's just like wood. But these little details here where the letters are connected, they wouldn't last very long in her house. So I'm going to find something to glue that onto. But these details for the wood, incredible. So architecturally, the wood is great. Fine details, I wouldn't recommend using the wood for fine details unless you've really thought it out, because it may just come off with the brush of a finger. Alright, so this is what it looks like when it's done. We have the rubber on the outside. I've got PETG as the frame, wood on the inside, and then the axle goes in the back like this, and the axle, I'm sorry, the counterweight goes here. There we go. So the counterweight keeps this straight up and down. So as the Plinko's going down, the little Plinko guide, you can see that the logo is going to stay upright so that people can reach your logo as it's bouncing down. Alright. So that's this month's box. I think every time we get a maker box, I want to set some kind of challenge. It's too easy just to print samples of things. I wanted to be a little bit creative. Like, you've given me 4 things. How can I incorporate them into one project where one filament enhances another? Because that's kind of what we learned this week. What we learned is that with all the different textures and all the different properties of all the different samples that we've received, how can I incorporate that and enhance one print or one project? So every month we're going to be doing that. So before I let you go, I did want to show you one other project I've been working on. Let me go ahead and grab these out. You know that I got that new Delta printer. It gave me nothing but problems. Right now I'm having a hard time keeping the Bowden tube into the fitting for the extruder. It keeps on popping out, and we have to call the company and see if I can get that replaced. I was talking with Chris over at Today's 3D Print, and he had the same problem with his, but he had a spare, and they forgot to send a spare for me. So I was able to take and splice a piece of Capricorn Bowden tubing in place. They twisted around to jam it in place, and then I did a 32-hour print. This is a skull. You can take an Echo Dot and you can fit it right in here. This is really good. This is done with Zyro's twinkling bright red filament. I really like the Zyro line. It's not very expensive. They have great variety. You can see that not only does it twinkle, but it's translucent as well, so you can see inside to the layers. This worked out great. I also wanted to try more PETG. Haven't had a lot of luck with PETG. This is generic PETG, and I did the same kind of skull. It took a little bit longer, about 36 hours, but it came out great. I'm really loving this. PETG is really difficult to use for me. I don't know if it's my settings or my equipment. This one printed out fantastically. I'm really happy with this, and it's solid. It's about a 30% infill because I'm going to gift it to a house that has lots of kids, so it's going to be knocked around a bit. So I wanted to make sure it was durable, and so it took a little bit longer, but it is solid. Alright, well that concludes this episode of Average Joe's 3D. As always, go ahead and subscribe below so that we can grow the channel. Hope you enjoyed it. Our next project is going to be Speed Buggy, SKU 3D. I don't know if you checked them out, but go ahead and check them out because they're great. They do a lot of stuff from cartoons and video games. They do weapons, swords and guns and knives and shields. And he's just getting into vehicles, including the Jetsons car. He did the Flintstones car, and he did Speed Buggy. And I was originally going to do the Flintstones, but then Speed Buggy came out, and I'm like, no, dude, I'm totally doing Speed Buggy. Well, I appreciate you watching Average Joe's 3D. You have a great day. Bye.